Welcome back to The World Over and our Story-Ended segment where we talk to some of the best authors anywhere. He is the best-selling writer of over 36 novels for children and young readers, including the Newberry Award winning Maniac Mcgee. I spoke with him about the source of some of his best-loved stories, tips for getting your kids to read, and his book, The Warden's Daughter. Here's my interview with Jerry Spinelli. Jerry, you initially wrote for adults. You didn't intend to write for kids. Tell us how this happened.
I had written 4 books that nobody wanted over a period of about 15 years.
Wow.
Started in on book number 5, thanks to one of my kids who stole my lunch one day out of the refrigerator, and I started writing something about that at work that day. To the extent that a non-published author can be audacious enough to imagine an audience, I imagined an audience of somebody like people like you and me reading it, because I thought, thinking back on the life of a 13-year-old kid, I thought it was funny and interesting, and I thought folks like us would find it interesting to go back and look at that. But when my agent went to sell it to publishers, they told her, well, this is about a kid. Adults won't read a kid's book. You're going to have to peddle this to the juvenile divisions, which is what she did, and that's where I landed, and I've been there ever since.
Wow. Where did that character come from? I remember Jason. I read that book. It was Space Station 7th grade.
That's right. Yes.
Why is that your favorite book?
I'd say it's my co-favorite.
Okay.
I guess because it's my first published. And when you consider that it came along 25 years, a quarter of a century after I decided I wanted to be a writer, that was pretty meaningful. So my first baby, my co-favorite, yes.
Yeah. What's your favorite?
Well, I'd say along with that, I'd name Maniac Mcgee.
Yeah, and we'll talk about him in a moment, because that's such a favorite, I know, to everyone watching, and certainly to this guy. Many of your books, so many of them, right down to your most recent, The Warden's Daughter, they really do touch on lived experience and really universal memories. How much of it do you rely on your own memories or those of your children?
I would say a lot, particularly myself.
Really?
That's what I do. People assume, considering the number of kids and grandkids that we have, 6 kids, 30 grandkids, that I must be using them for source material all the time. But in fact, more often than not, it's myself. I remember things. I remember giving my first public talk, and somebody in the audience raised a hand and said, "How do you remember all this stuff?" And that was my first indication that apparently not everyone does. I thought it was common. I thought we all carry this stuff around like an addict. But I don't always remember what I did or said, but I often remember my reactions to things. I remember how I felt about things. And so I'm constantly mining my own memories.
Wow. I am amazed, I have to tell you. That was the thing. In fact, I made a note about it. How do you recall this? You know, when I read that you mine your own memories for so many of these characters, some of their reaction and the situations they find themselves in, I was thinking, I can't remember those. It is a rare gift.
Maybe it is, and for that I'm thankful. It's given me a career. I remember getting a letter from a kid in the 90s. He said, Jason is just like me. How do you know what I think? And I wanted to tell the kid, and here it goes back to the question, kids don't change. Their haircuts change, their sneakers cost more, and so forth. But a kid when I was growing up in the 50s and a kid today they still have the same feelings, the same situations. A kid is a kid. There's the eternal kid. That doesn't change. And so if I'm going back and mining myself at the same time, I'm mining us all, the eternal kid.
In 1989, you make a pretty major decision in your life to write full-time. You quit your day job and you do this. There was a lot of hardship in the for a while there financially.
Yeah.
How hard was that for your family? You had 6 children.
Yeah, it was scary. I was out of work only for about a year, and I was beginning to look at the one ads because I didn't think we were going to be able to make it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what made you stick to it? I mean, you were already, I imagine, writing about this character, Jeffrey Lionel McGee, who would become Maniac Mcgee.
Yes, and that book was not setting the world on fire. But then you say, what happened?
Yeah, tell us what happened.
A phone call happened at midnight, and my wife and I are asleep. I hear the phone ringing in the hallway. I don't want to answer it. When's the last time you got good news at midnight over the phone? So I answered it, and there was somebody on the end of the line telling me that they were careful not to get the facts mixed up with the truth, which I recognized as a line from the beginning of Maniac Mcgee.
Right.
And it turns out that some folks in a hotel room in Chicago had cast a vote, and Maniac Mcgee was the winner. And so first thing I knew was that I didn't need to go back to work. My work now
was writing.
Once and forever was going to be writing.
And
yes.
you were a Newbery Honor winner.
Yeah, well, Newbery Medal winner is what they called it. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Tell me about that story, because it's a beautiful sort of fable about that engages racism, and the story of this boy alone finding his way, being adopted, if you will, temporarily by various families. Where did this story find its germ?
It's hard to say. I wrote 80 pages of it, tossed them away, wrote 100 more, tossed them away, and really wasn't. I couldn't zero in on it. I think I wanted to write about a kid who was a hero to other kids. And more than anything else, first, there was the memory of a song. Now, you're way too young to remember this. Late 50s, early 60s, Martha and the Vandellas, Dancing in the Street.
Right.
Well-known a song. That always affected me. The vision of that that song suggests. Everyone, all kinds, all colors, all backgrounds, dancing together in the street. And I think I wanted to write a book that would deliver a vision like that. So I think that more than anything, and then deciding after those 2 strikes that to make Maniac, to focus it in on the black-white issue more than anything else. And once I began to focus in on it, I was visited by the Muse. I wasn't sure I believed in the Muse, speaking of belief. Yeah. Didn't know I believed in the Muse until it visited me. One night, I'm there not even thinking about it, because I had had the 2 flame outs, and I figured, well, okay, I'm going to turn my back on this book for a couple of days. And sometimes, as you know, that's when things happen.
Yeah, it starts crackling. You hear it in the bathtub. You hear it when you're walking the dog.
Yeah. And what I heard in my ear one night was, they say Maniac Mcgee was born in a dump. I wasn't reaching for that sentence. I wasn't thinking about the book at all. Those words just popped from nowhere into my head. And I went on and wrote a couple of paragraphs, showed them to Eileen, and she said, that's it. And the book was on its way.
Maniac Mcgee is set in a town called Two Mills.
Yes.
In some of the writing and reportage I've seen, this town is sort of based on your childhood, Norristown.
Yes.
Where you grew up.
Yes.
Two Mills was the setting for Maniac Mcgee. It is also the setting of your newest book, The Warden's Daughter. Yes. Why did you return to Two Mills, and why did you call it Two Mills?
Because it's where I grow up, and as you know, what piece of advice to young aspiring writers is more common than write what you know?
Right.
So it just feels natural and comfortable for me to return to that setting.
Let's talk, there's some story-oriented questions I ask every author that comes here. Your favorite children's book and why?
That would be When You Are Happy. You may not be familiar with it. I'll tell you who wrote it. The person I live with, Spinelli. And I consider it the world's most beautiful book. It hits my trifecta for text, illustration, and message. I challenge anybody to show me another book where so much humanity is packed into so few pages. It's a 32-page picture book, and it's beautiful, and I believe it should be in everyone's home in this country. And so that wins my vote, hands down.
What's your least favorite book?
I'm trying to think. I'm not coming up with it.
You're not coming. You see, the writers always have problems with the least favorite.
Yeah.
For me, it's, you know, the big monster pieces.
You know, give me time enough, and I'd come up with.
See, I'm not a James Joyce fan. I don't like James Joyce. I cannot read Joyce anymore. I just I find that torturous.
Yeah. I took a shot. Maybe that's my least favorite book, Finnegan's Wake.
I'm with you.
You're talking to somebody who actually read 30 pages of it.
Oh, well, you see, you got through more than me.
Finnegan's Wake, I dare you to get through a paragraph.
Right.
So I'm proud of those 30 pages.
See, but we agree. I'm glad we agree on the least favorite. What is the story that helped you find your way and the lesson you derived from it?
Believe it or not, I think it was the first story that meant something to me, and that was my mother reading it to me, and that was Babar the Elephant.
Oh.
And of course, I didn't understand what it meant to me or how it may have affected me till many years later. It's the story that has a sad ending, you know, of an elephant dying. But I kept asking my mother to keep reading it to me night after night. And then now I ask myself, why did I do that? I'm as sad as it was, and it made me cry every time. I must have been getting something out of it, and I finally figured it. What I was getting out of it was it was making me feel somehow. It was drawing a reaction out of me. It was touching my heart, and what I learned from it was the power of a story.
Where do you write and why?
I have written in many places. I have written, as one writer says, in the cracks. When you have a family like I did, a job, several part-time jobs, you learn to write in the cracks of time.
Right.
Now I'm happy to say that things have gone well enough that now my office, my desk is here, and I'm looking out big picture window, and then a few yards of land and a lake. I mean, I see deer walk by, groundhogs, an eagle.
Life moving.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to parents who have children who are reluctant readers?
You can put in front of them a book that they can relate to. Take Silas Marner away. Go to the library, talk to the children's librarian, let them recommend something that your kid can relate to, a life of a character that in some way resembles your kid's life.
Final question on this book. What do you hope people take from it, and why did you write it?
Beyond the fact that Ellen Adams gave me the spine of a good story,
I'll say,
what I found there was an opportunity to tell the story of someone who is a quiet hero. They're all around us. We see them all the time. We interact with folks doing wonderful things that nobody knows about. They're getting no trophies. Right. They're getting no headlines. Nobody knows about it, but they're sacrificing themselves, and often as not, they're doing so on our behalf, and we don't even know it. And such a situation occurs with Cammie and her inmate housekeeper, Elota Pupko.
No, it's a beautiful story, and thank you for sacrificing for all these years for so many. What an impact you've had. Thank you.